So I recently upgraded from an RTX 3070 to an RTX 5070. As you guys know, I just built my brother's PC that had a 5070 paired with a 9900X in it, and seeing the performance of the card in his system along with my recent upgrade from a 7600 to a 9700X, I decided to scrape together all the money I could and cop a 5070 for myself. Now there was a lot of people that was questioning why I would do this because it's like, well, you have an RTX 3070, so how big of an upgrade would that really be? Is that really going to be worth your money? If you look around on the market, most 5070s are around $700 to $800, and I don't really have $700 to $800 to throw out at something like this. That being said, I actually ended up going with a PNY RTX 5070 compared to the MSI one that my brother had in that video. I ended up getting a hell of a deal on this thing. I got it right at MSRP for the 5070, which was $549 total. If I would have dished out another $150, I could have had the MSI edition, but I figured that they're both the same card, and I actually do want to make a video comparing our cards to see if it's worth spending that extra $150 or if you're just buying RGB light. I actually picked up this PNY 5070 from my local Walmart. I'm not sure if you guys can find it. I have seen some Reddit posts talking about how people are getting them on rollback for like $400. If you can find one for $400, that is a fantastic deal. I couldn't. None were on rollback. I actually went to a few stores, but that's okay. The fact that I get it right at MSRP, I was happy with in general. For installation, it was really easy, as you guys can expect. It's just changing out a GPU. It took me maybe 30 minutes because I made it way more difficult than I needed to be. I did a little bit more cable management and moved some stuff around. I had to use the little squid splitter cable that turned the two 8-pins into a 500-watt GPU power cable because I didn't buy the new Corsair PSU that has the 500-watt connector on it. And something to note, if you've been using two 8-pins for your old GPU and you go to hook them straight into the new splitter cable, make sure to blow out the ends. My PC would not post until I undid all my power cables and blew them out. I think it's because my old 3070 actually took a 6-pin instead of two 8-pins. It took a 6-pin and an 8-pin. And if you guys know, PCI power cables all come as 8s. They have little 2 pins that can fold out of the way, and that's how I had mine. So I think over the years, that one 6-pin that had that little 2 folded off was just collecting dust in the 2 pins. So when I plugged everything in, and this connector hadn't ever really been plugged in, I think it was packed full of dust and I just couldn't get a good enough connection. Something. It just would not work. Make sure it's clean and you shouldn't have this goofy issue like I did. Now on to performance. I benchmark a lot of games that I regularly play. Probably some of the most standard, normal games that you see everybody playing these days. Especially now that Siege X went free, I wanted to start off with Siege because I know it is free to play now and there's going to be a lot more people to actually be playing the game. First off, I'm using Ultra Plus settings in both these tests for both cards and I put DLSS on auto. Obviously someone's going to get mad that I'm using DLSS because it's the newer edition of DLSS and raw power, 5070 compared to the 3070, DLSS, blah, blah, blah. I just want to say, if you're never going to use DLSS, then bless your heart, but I wanted to have a consistency test. Using the exact same settings on both ends shows you that, okay, is DLSS 4 worth paying that money for as well? This isn't a raw performance power test, quote unquote, like everyone's trying to pull on the 5070. This is using every feature it has compared to every feature that the 3070 has. And if I had a 4070 to use as a benchmark test between the two, I would as well. Please don't get mad at me for no reason. I didn't change any settings across the two. I wanted a good benchmark. So starting off with the RTX 3070, I averaged about 152 frames per second, which is fantastic results for such an old GPU, let's be real. It's a few years old. I've been gaming on it and streaming. Did I mention I play at 1440p? Because that is a fantastic thing to be running at. The minimums are a little tough, dropping all the way down to 100 frames at times. The actual stats here say 100 frames minimum, but most of the time it was only going all the way down to like 119 and maybe blinking down to 100 for very, very small intervals. And that is not bad. I'm telling you, if you're going to keep it at high settings instead of ultra plus, I'm sure you could hit the 200 FPS mark, especially if you put on DLSS to any setting, whether it be auto, performance, any form of DLSS will help you here. And that's what I usually played with this 3070 every time I played. Max FPS peaks around 200 FPS as well, for very small intervals. But moving on to the 5070, I got a massive improvement, almost doubling the FPS count entirely. First off, it averaged 250 FPS, so that's an entire 100 FPS exactly increase between the two, with the exact same settings, I say again. Minimum FPS being sky high compared to the 3070s, because it was actually the 3070s peak FPS, which was 200. That was the minimum for the 5070. The maximum just being as good as it can be, being all the way up in the 300s, and this is just a day and night difference. I know that DLSS 4 may be carrying this 5070 into being much better, but like I said, I just wanted to do an actual user test. Having it on auto actually did seem to look crispier on the 5070 compared compared to the 3070. So power for power, I'm sure that the 5070 substantially outperforms the 3070. The VRAM loads for both these cards were okay, but the 3070 is only 8 gigabytes, while the 5070 is 12, which 12 is honestly pretty low itself. It's a massive improvement though if you're coming from a 3070. NVIDIA really does need to increase the VRAM to try and keep up with the AMD cards like the 9070, which has 20 gigs of RAM, I believe. The next game I tested was Warzone. Now Warzone doesn't have a proper benchmark test like Siege does, so I had to do this completely raw and just do what I had to do. Running around standard battle royale with the ultra preset on. I could not set it any higher for the 3070 due to the VRAM limit it has being only 8 gigs. So I used the ultra preset for both of these. I averaged around 80 FPS pretty consistently. Honestly, rarely did I see it drop from 80, but I'll give it a leeway of giving it about 10 FPS dropping down in maybe into the 70s and then climbing up all the way up into the 90s, but rarely. Again, it's pretty consistently across the board stayed at about 80. This is more than playable, honestly, but for a PC, this just isn't that impressive at all. I'm sure my PS5 runs this game better than my PC did. The fact that I could only go to the ultra preset and I could not go any higher than that due to the VRAM load cooking itself on the 3070, it kind of upset me. Once I installed the 5070, obviously it does have the 12 gigs of RAM, but I wanted to keep it consistent, so I left it on the ultra preset. I averaged around 150 FPS, sometimes jumping all the way up to 200, which was amazing, man. It's amazing to play at these, especially when you have a 180 hertz monitor like I do, and I was live streaming from the exact same computer, so 200 FPS around that, or even hovering around 150 FPS is more than playable for me while I'm streaming, and if I'm not streaming, I usually see about a 20 FPS increase, so I could see anywhere between 180 right at my monitor's limit, or I could probably see upwards of 220 or 230 on occasions. If I tweak with the settings, I feel like I could get a lot more out of it, but I didn't. Again, consistency. It felt so amazing, and I hate that Twitch is kind of cooking my live stream quality as of late. I don't know what I changed, but it kind of has been looking rough, so you can't graphically see how shocking it is. But let my buddy Timberland, who came over in the middle of this, rate it in person.
Dude, the buildings look better than mine. Mine look like, let me think, you know when, like, everything...
Dude!
Buttered?
I'm sorry.
This looks crispy.
I'm about to let you play. Now, moving on to RDR2 Online, I threw the game at absolutely maxed out settings for both of these GPUs because both of them could handle it. DLSS on quality, and it actually wasn't an insane improvement, honestly. 3070, I average around 60 frames per second with a little bit of stuttering, actually, and I think that may have something to do with the VRAM being completely overloaded, but again, did I question it? No, it ran the game. It stayed around 50 to 60 FPS consistently, which isn't the worst thing in the world, especially when you take a game like RDR2 that looks fantastic, put it on the max settings, and then what do you expect? It's going to drop FPS pretty Trying it on the 5070 wasn't much different. Running it on max settings, it was pretty steadily around 80 frames to 100 frames, with occasional drops maybe into the 70s, but very, very rarely. But it was a lot smoother of an experience, with no stuttering whatsoever. And it seemed to have a lot better fidelity, but again, that could have been placebo effect for me testing a new GPU that I was really excited for. Now, moving on into the GTA 5 Enhanced Edition, this was probably my biggest difference. Made sure to put the settings on maximum ray trace, just so I could have a consistency-based test, and I put DLSS on, I think, quality. The frame rate on the RTX 3070 was completely unplayable in the first scene. It was dropping all the way down to 13 FPS and 15 FPS, but oddly, all of a sudden, it jumped up. It jumped into the 30s, which is no better, honestly. That's pretty horrible, especially for PC GTA. I'm pretty sure that the PS5 runs this game at 60, but it probably doesn't look this amazing. It was on maximum ray tracing, so it looked gorgeous, and it was on DLSS quality, but it was running pretty rough, let's be honest. The next few scenes, it does jump up all the way into the 70s, so I wanted to give it a little bit of leeway and be like, okay, well, let's say it averages around 60, 70 FPS, just because it did ramp up in the later scenes. So as a rough estimate, let's just say 65 FPS is what it averaged. Moving on to the RTX 5070, it was a completely different ball game. Running at a smooth 150 FPS average. It did dip down into maybe low end of 100, but it went all the way up to 180 in some of these scenes, and it was very, very gorgeous. I don't know what other word to say. It looked amazing. It ran flawlessly. There was no issues with the VRAM. It was a beautiful experience. I'm curious what DLAA looks like, because I would like to see ray tracing being just one-to-one beautiful, like no funny business, but I don't know if the 5070 can handle that. So if you guys want to see a video of me testing DLAA, let me know down in the comments below, and I'll try my best. Not that I play GTA Enhanced a lot anymore, but I do remember when Enhanced first came out, I played a lot of it on the 3070, and there was this issue where I would be running the maximum ray tracing for a good long time, and all of a sudden it would just drop FPS to like 15 FPS. So I'm not sure if that was what was happening with the card when we were testing it. I don't know if that's still an issue around, but I did play on high ray tracing most of the time, and it would still have this issue, which I would just trickle it back down with no ray tracing on. The ray tracing of GTA 5 can be super, super glitchy, so keep in mind, honestly, the 3070 can probably run this a little bit better, so don't think it's going to run at 13 FPS like it did in that first scene. Expect it to run in the 60s like it did later on. But the 5070 did completely stomp it out of the water, going all the way up into the hundreds, and then coming down maybe bottom 90s. So obviously you can see that the 5070 just completely beats it up. Quick intermission in this video. A game I forgot that I tested, but I just found all the footage for was Half Sword. Playing on cinematic settings at 1440p was not possible for the 3070 in any way, shape, or form. It was literally 30 FPS, and sometimes it would just crash the game out completely. It was running so horribly, and I know it looks like a struggle bus even trying to record it. I literally could not stream this. I think that's why I did this later off of camera, because I just could not, my PC could not handle streaming and playing this. But moving up to the 5070, I actually could get it around 60 to 100 FPS. Obviously very inconsistently because it is a very experimental kind of game that hasn't been fully released yet, but it did improve greatly and vastly. And this was actually one of the games that made me decide to get a 5070 because my brother could play it at cinematic settings and I could not. So, you know, pure spite. The more games I play when I try out this 5070, the more I enjoy it and the less I regret buying it. Honestly, especially if you actually tweak with settings instead of doing a true benchmark, with this new version of DLSS, you can get amazing performance out of the card. I mean, it's just fantastic. If anyone's shying you away from buying this because, oh, it's not good value for the VRAM size, or, oh, generated AI frames, don't listen to them. It's a valid point to be had when you're talking about frame generation and the input, and your input is still at your native frame rate compared to what's being displayed to you when it's AI generated. But if you're a person that enjoys gaming regularly and you aren't a pro going in a pro tournament, this card is more than amazing for what you're going to want it to do. I do recommend making sure you're at least getting 60 FPS before you turn on frame generation, but I have yet to even find a game that'll allow me to use it. The only thing I've been able to benefit off of was DLSS 4, which is amazing. I play at 1440p, which a lot of you guys don't, so you may even see more results than I did. But this was worth the buy. This was astonishing, and honestly, if I could make the decision all over again, I would pick this card 1,000 times over for the deal I got for it. I actually really thought about getting the AMD card that has been talking about how it's so much better than the 5070, and it's usually just about a 20 frame difference. Honestly, I would love to, but I could not find one below $800, and I found this card for $500, so it's just a better buy if you can get a good deal with one. I do recommend keeping your eyes open for everything out there. If there's something you'd much rather have, like if you want to buy a 4080, a 4090, if you want to spend that kind of money, you can get great performance out. If you want to buy a 5080, 5090, you'll get better performance than the 5070. If you want to go with AMD and you want to buy a different card that they sell, everything is okay, regardless of whatever you want. It's your computer and it's your choice. Don't hate anybody and don't hate any brands for no reason. I just had to get over that myself. I used to have this hate for AMD GPUs for no reason, and I had to get that out of my head. Just because I've had a few bad experiences with them doesn't mean they're the worst thing in the world. Look up the AMD 9070 and see if you can find it cheaper than the 5070. Look on your local Walmart and see if you can get a P&Y 5070 for like $500 like I did. If you don't want to make the purchase and you want to find out more about both of the cards themselves, just do what I did and look at the benchmarks for it, compare the two, and see if whichever's worth your money. I wish I had a 9070 to use and test to compare the two GPUs, but I am broke like no joke, so unless AMD wants to provide old Pawpaw with one, we're not getting that test. I'm gonna have to stick with the 5070 and stick with NVIDIA. So AMD, please, I want to try out one of your GPUs, man. Honestly, that's all I had to say for this video. I hope you guys have been enjoying the whole PC content thing that I've been doing a lot of, but I know this is about to dry out completely. I'm out of money, I'm out of upgrades, so there's really nothing else I can do. There may be some more builds I may do for other people here soon, but it's not going to be many benchmarks. I do want to bring my buddy Timberland's PC over here and go worst PC versus a decent PC, but that's going to be another video for another time. If there's any games you guys may want me to test on the 5070, please come by my stream and let me know, and I can probably open them on stream for you, and I can show you how it runs. A game I would like to go back and try is Last of Us Part 2, because I had really good performance with the 3070 on it, but I want to see what the 5070 can do, because if I can run that game in 180 frames the entire time, that's going to be beautiful. Anyways, guys, that is it, and I'll see you guys in the next video.